Welcome to The Whiskey Preacher. I'm your host, Phil Shepard, better known as The Whiskey Preacher, and I've entitled this vidcast, Am I Truly a Pacifist? I was having this conversation a few days ago after I was done leading my lecture/dialogue at Brighton University with a whole bunch of D-Min students. When I mean a whole bunch of D-Min students, that means I think there was 4 of them. Nonetheless, I was still very happy to be there, and we got into really good dialogue. But we were talking about, afterwards at lunch, we were talking about Stanley Hauerwas and whether we were a big fan of him or not. And for those of you who don't know who Stanley Hauerwas is, for a very long time, he was considered the most influential theologian here in the United States. In fact, in 2001, Time magazine ranked him as the most influential theologian in America. The reason why a lot of people don't remember that is because it was in the September issue of 2001, and there were a lot of other things going on, like 9/11 and things like that. People trying to figure out what they wanted to do with life post 9/11. So nobody ever really paid attention to that article. For some reason, I remembered this crap. T.D. Jakes was on the cover of Time magazine for that issue with the question, is he the next Billy Graham? I don't know if that answer has ever been found out, and I really don't care. I like the way T.D. Jakes dresses, but that's about all I can say about him, and I'm not going to speak negative about him because I actually have some friends that are really close to him, and yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But the conversation about Stanley Hauerwas proposed this question to me. You know, Stanley is very much a known pacifist. He grew up here in Texas. There's many stories about him and growing up in Texas and being the minority because he was a pacifist. There was a story I once heard him tell of his father giving him this antique pistol that I don't know if it was from a Texas Ranger or whatnot, but it was a gift. It was not even a functional pistol. And he told his father that he could not take it because of what it stood for. And though I didn't articulate this question during the conversation, I thought I would save it for the vidcast here on The Whiskey Preacher, is this. If you are a pacifist, which I am not, I don't claim to be, I'm not a warmonger, I'm not pro-war by any stretch of the means, but I don't think necessarily pacifism is the answer either. But those of you who do claim pacifism, if you are verbally abusive or if you are verbally aggressive, does that still make you a pacifist? If you become a verbal terrorist, are you still, and can you still be considered a pacifist? Because even though pacifism, and I'll have the exact definition below this vidcast down here right above the comment section of what pacifism is, but I have a hard time believing that if you truly are verbally abusive, verbally aggressive, and cause harm to other people through your words, that you could still label yourself as a pacifist. And I'm not suggesting Stanley Hauerwas is a verbal terrorist, though I'm sure the argument can be made from time to time. He's very abrasive, but so am I, and by no means do I think I'm a verbal terrorist, but I do come on the verbal offensive once in a while, and I've always had this saying, you can mess with me or you can fuck with me all you want, but if you fuck with my friends and family, it's on. Take Ken Silva, for instance. I'm not plugging Ken Silva here, but he runs this website that I'm not going to mention, but he a lot of times takes a lot of liberties and becomes this verbal terrorist on my friends and people I really love, that people he's never met, and it's okay for him to actually have a difference of opinion, but he becomes very ugly and has had this verbal assault on some people I really care about. So I wrote this post called "The Burning Crosses of Ken Silva." I'll also have that link down here. I wrote it a couple of years ago because Ken had also had taken the liberties of attacking me publicly, which I was fine about. Um, but I wasn't necessarily fine about the ugly things that he was saying about my friends. So I took the offense against him and I compared him to his verbal assaults on my friends like Carol Howard Merritt and Nadia Boltzweber and some of my other friends that I truly dearly love, that I thought he was being a terrorist. He was the equivalent of a virtual Ku Klux Klan. And I compared him to Hitler, and he commented on the blog, and he was so offended that I was able to compare him to Hitler and the Ku Klux Klan. But my point was is that his words and his verbal and blog assaults upon my friends and my family was a terrorist act. And I don't use that term very lightly either. And and so it made me start thinking with the conversation that it led to the other day when I was talking to my friends about Harawas and him being a staunch pacifist. Can you verbally assault people? Can you verbally terrorize people through your emails, your tweets, your Facebook posts, your comments on blogs, things like that? Can you still assault people and still consider yourself a pacifist? I would love to hear your thoughts. If you are a pacifist, I commend you. I just happen not to be one. I sleep very well with a 357 under my pillow, and if somebody ever breaks in to my home and gets past my dogs. By the way, if you haven't voted for our dogs on the Compton, I think it's the Compton. It may not be the Compton. I'll have the link for that below. If you haven't voted for our dogs for this photo contest, please vote for them. It's very important to us. Never asked for this type of stuff, and this is a side note, but it's important to us. Asafa and Big Mama are their names. But if you get past Asafa and Big Mama, then just know you'll probably meet my 357. And I know it's going to emotionally and spiritually crush me to some degree, but that's what counseling's for. Thank you again for joining the conversation here on The Whiskey Preacher. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below. You can also engage this conversation on Twitter, which is the # Whiskey Preacher. Go to my Facebook page, which is Whiskey Preacher. Don't forget to like the page. You can engage the conversation there as well. And feel free to spread this around to your friends. I want to hear your thoughts. Again, proposing the question, can you be verbally abusive, verbally assaultive? Can you assault people on Twitter, Facebook, blogs, and still consider yourself a pacifist? Thanks for joining the conversation. I look forward to hearing your comments.